Welcome back to Rick's Scale Model Fix and a brand new video build. This time I'm going to be looking at Eduard's weekend edition 1/72 scale Spitfire F Mk.IX. So these weekend edition kits from Eduard seem to represent really good value for money. They're lacking the niceties of the Profi packs, so there's no masks, no resin and no etched details, but the basics are all there and the details are generally excellent at a really affordable price. So this kit from the onset I'm going to be doing in the B scheme, and these are just quick projects just to break up the longer projects such as the Skyhawk and the F-16 and some of the mainstream projects that I work on. So I've just made a highlight there at the top of the page to remind me that it's the B scheme. And we're just looking through the instruction books as always, just to have a look at where we're going and what we're doing. So the first stage of the construction seems to focus primarily on the cockpit. We have got seat belts and they're presented in decal form, and we have a number of instrument panels. So you've got one with raised bezels, you've got one that's naked essentially, and there's also a decal on the decal sheet that can represent the dials and switches there for you as well. Colour callouts are all looking as though they are in guns initially, or whatever MMP is. Mission model paints maybe. Let's just have a quick look through there. Yeah, just to confirm that those are mission model paints. So it looks, even though for the smaller scale you could be mistaken looking at these instruction books that it's larger. Certainly the details there. So just turning the page, having a glance through, there are some things that we need to do. So it's saying that you need to remove some sections there for a closed canopy. We're not going to have the canopy closed. Fuselage sidewalls all coming together, and it's very modular in its assembly there. The wings look to be quite straightforward, so there's an option that we can do while we're waiting for the paint to dry on the cockpit assembly. And I think that's probably about as far as we need to go. So one of the things that is questionable in fit with these kits is this top cowling, so more of that later. We've got separate wing tips. Again, I'd do a whole family of Spitfires. Ailerons, flaps. So yeah, all in all, looks to be quite a straightforward build in this smaller scale. So after about 20 minutes, half an hour's work, we've got quite a bit of the building of the internal parts together. So we've got pilot seat and rudder pedals there ready for painting. Sidewalls, instrument panel which features some lovely raised detail, and the rear bulkhead. So it's off to the spray bay now with these, and we'll get them in primer and then RAF interior green. So it's progressed quite well with the Eduard 1/72 scale Spitfire, and the cockpit is all done. So for a 72nd scale kit, the detail in there is quite nice. Nice side walls, and the all-important fuselage fit check reveals that everything does fit in there as intended. So we painted the RAF interior green using the MRP shades, and for the first time on a 72nd scale kit, just thought we'd try these AK pens, and they did prove to be quite easy to use, and we used those for the detail painting, save airbrushing everything, and everything came out quite well. And the interior green is a pretty good match for the MRP colour as well, which is a bonus. So we're at the point of joining the fuselage halves together, and as always we're going to do a test fit. Now everything does go together quite well in here, but let's just make sure we've got everything lined up. so. And what we're going to do is just check to make sure that there's no spread of the fuselage or anything like that because of a bulkhead that's in the wrong position or that's slightly over tolerance. And we're just going to fit the chin intake, and this should be a perfect fit with the fuselage, which it appears to be. And also we're going to just fit this lower piece wing, which is going to snap in there like so, and everything lines up perfectly. So we're good to go and join these halves together now. So we're going to be using Tamiya quick drying extra thin, and we're literally just going to put it in there. It's only a small model, it's not going to need a lot. So this wants to push out here, so we're just going to have a little look as to why. And it does go together, even though it does want to push out slightly. It does want to come out of true. We've just got a little bit of the sprue rim gate there, and there we go, that's good. The Eduard plastic's quite nice, so it doesn't take long for this glue to start biting. Get everything lined up and make sure everything fits inside. So it does want to push this part of the fuselage out slightly, and we do have a step here now. So we're just going to, in the recess there, and run it down the spine. Hopefully we can just nudge it on into place, which we have, and that's a perfect fit. There are raised rivets down that spine as well. I think we'll be saying goodbye to those in this scale. I don't think it really matters. So it does want to push out at the nose, look. So we've got the bulkheads in place, and it's just this one inside. So we'll secure the rear end with some tape, I think. Just not forget the vertical tail, keeping our fingers away. We're just going to hold that because it does want to move, and if it moves we're going to end up with a really bad step there on the spine, which we don't want. Now there is access into the underside of the fuselage through the internal bit underneath, so we're just going to get some glue in there to reinforce that joint. That all looks good. So just remember, the time that you spend doing this is time saved cleaning those seams up later. And there's the click. So I'm just going to add the glue at this time to this bulkhead inside the front and the nose of the model, and that's just to make sure everything does fit and everything lines up. Away again. It's So there is some warpage in this fuselage because it's under quite a bit of pressure there now. So we're going to reach for our trusty Tamiya tape. And we're just going to get it quite tight around that section, and that's going to hold that in place. And there, that looks better now. And then we've just got the section here again, so we're just going to go in with a longer paintbrush and do it from the inside and just gently squeeze that bead of glue out. And then what we're going to do with this when we're cleaning the seams up is just scrape it and sand it smooth. So we're just going to check the fit of this lower chin piece just to make sure we haven't got any fuselage spread or anything, and that looks to be a really good fit. I've got just a little bit of spread there, that's fine. And then clearly the wing section will go into the aperture there and everything lines up. We must remember to paint this section of the floor. As you can see that through the cockpit, and it looks a bit weird. So I'll let this dry now and then we'll come back and we'll see what's next. So with the fuselage all dry and the seams cleaned up, it was time to just slot those wings into place, and everything just went together really well. The only addition that stands out a mile is this: we've used the Eduard replacement cowl, which is an absolute perfect fit. This is an aftermarket part, but it just saves building up a cowl that's got a seam line right down the middle, and it just drops into place. We used a tiny bit of filler just on this side, and that was probably where I've just sanded it from the casting block. So it's now time to primer the model, and I hear you say, why prime? Well, this is a classic example where we've got a resin panel and the fuselage, different colour, different material, it takes paint differently, it'll affect your top coat of paints, and also it just highlights any imperfections. So whilst it looks pretty good as it is now, once we've got a coat of primer on it, all that detail will stand out, and so will any of our build flaws, so poor seams or fingerprints or things like that. And last but not least, it also helps the top layer of paints adhere properly to the plastic. So I'll crack on and do this and we'll see where we get up to. So we used MRP Fine Surface Grey Primer, and that's the end result. Doesn't really need any other work, but we have highlighted a couple of issues. So whereas I put the Mr. Surfacer in this side on the cowling, we've got a gap all the way around. Not a massive one, and that's why we prime. So I will put some Mr. Surfacer in there and just reprime that area. We've got a few little bits to tidy up on the seams, leading edges of the wings, and just where they've been attached to the sprue, just there. So with this paint drying, we're just going to come in now with a old Flory model sander, and we're just going to work on this area just to get it a little bit nicer. It's in a really visible part of the model, and we're just concentrating where that primer has shown that little blip. So sometimes with the plastic being quite glossy, it's hard, and the eye not really wanting to pick too much detail out, it's good to get a flat matte coat on, which the primer does, and you can just see that that was all the work I think that needs. So we'll come back in and put some more primer on there, and we've got another one just here, so it's just a bit of very localised sanding rather than a full-blown seam clean-up. So the primer helps to see where the high spots or the low spots are as well, so if there's any primer left, it's a low spot, and if you take the primer off, it's a high spot. And one of the joys of the MRP paint is it's literally dry the moment you spray it, unless you put a retarder in there. There's another one just here. So time spent now preparing these seams, well, they don't look a lot. They will haunt you on the finished model. They will stand out like a sore thumb. So I'll just do that whole area there because it's growing quite a little bit, and it feels quite smooth now. Leading edge of the wings looks okay, and then we'll just put this bit of Mr. Surfacer in. Regular viewer of the channel, you will know my little trick with IPA and Mr. Surfacer. So, but for those that haven't, it goes something like this. So we put your Mr. Surfacer in to the fault line. Like so. And then before it's dried, cottonwood, IPA, wipe it off. Don't go back with a second pass. New cotton bud, and there we go. That'll have filled that seam in without any sanding, without any real filling, without any effort at all. So there we have our primed Spitfire. Just going to give it a little rub over with some 12,000 grit micro mesh. It's a bit warm in here today, so we have got a few little high spots, and then it'll be on with the topside ocean grey. So our Eduard little Spitfire is now painted after a reasonably short session in the spray bay. So we've used MRP throughout. So we've got MRP 110 dark green World War II RAF, ocean grey MRP 115, that's for the top camouflage colours, and that goes over medium sea grey BS 637, which is MRP 112. And I'm sure you'll agree the finish there is pretty good. So what's next? So this is going to just have to be sanded very slightly and a gloss coat applied, and then that seals everything in that we've done. And then we'll come in with some basic weathering, and of course we've got to do the yellow ID stripes on the leading edges of the wings and the sky band around the rear of the fuselage. So we're back at the bench with the painting now finished on our little Spitfire, and it looks pretty good. So we've sprayed the sky band, the yellow leading edges and the red dope patches over the machine gun holes, and then I had to go at spraying the walkways. When I looked at the Eduard decals, they were literally the same width as the panel line, and I have a feeling that they'd have curled up inside that panel line. So with the digital calipers, I think from memory the panel line walkways on the decal sheet measured 0.6 of a mil, and I've sprayed these at 0.7. Now they do look a little bit heavy and a bit too wide for the scale, but I think otherwise we'd have had some issues with them basically masking and painting panel lines off. Could have just looked like a wash. All in all, I'm quite happy. We've made up the exhausts and got those in. We've got the gloss coat on. We made the propeller hub and blades up. Just to get the spinner and the back plate to match, I had to cut the spindle off the prop blades and sand the back of the blades down. But it doesn't matter, that'll just get glued on. I'm not wanting to spin the propeller. We've got the wheels and undercarriage doors there to do, and we're really rapidly getting to the decaling stage. So work on the Spitfire's progressed quite well, and we've got the decals on. Now these are the Eduard decals, and they're a bit of a handful, but they have gone on. It'd be interesting to see once they've gone under a matte coat to see if there is any silvering. I'm not holding my breath. I've not tried to remove the carrier film. So all that's left for me to do now is just add the underwing roundels. So not really teaching anybody how to add decals, but we're going to dip them in water, and then we're going to use some microsol. And we're just going to paint the areas on the wings with some microsol before we add the decals. And then we can manoeuvre them into position. I just use a knife. Add a bit more water on there. I'm not too impressed with the quality of these decals. They seem to have they remind me of the old Matchbox ones, where the carrier went white when you used to put them in water. So obviously there's raised detail there. So what we're going to do in the first instance is just roll a cotton bud over them, just so they don't move. Now these decals seem a bit impervious to microsol, so we're going to use some Decal Fix MIG. And I've had this destroy decals, so we go sparingly with this. Try it on a decal that doesn't matter first. And we're just going to leave that now. So sometime later we've come back, probably about an hour, and you can see that that decal softener started to work, and it's really dragging those decals down over those raised details. So all that's left for us to do now is get a matte coat or a satin coat in the first instance onto this. Then we can unmask the canopy and start looking at getting that on, and a bit of weathering just to remove the shiny new appearance. But hopefully we're not so far off with this one now. So our little Eduard Spitfire is now finished. So I'll just put that matte coat on, to some chipping, altered the tones of the dark grey and green slightly, so that you have to look to see if it's been weathered. And I didn't want an absolutely battered machine, but I wanted one that had looked as though it was just been out and done a few hours, and hopefully I've achieved that. Now I did go back and alter those walkway lines. They were just too thick, and the more I looked at them, the more they were starting to get on my nerves. So thankfully, one of the joys of using a gloss coat, just got micromesh 12,000 grit and sanded them off. Did very, very minimal damage to the top coats. We've done the canopy, and that's all in place. Hopefully that'll focus on that. And we've done the port and starboard navigation lights, and for the landing light underneath we've just used the crystal clear trick. Puddle of that in there. Once that's dried, that'll be perfectly clear after painting the recess silver. So all in all, a very enjoyable little project. Value for money is right up there at less than £12 UK. Everything's in there that you need. Could do with a little finesse. The wheels were a bit of a pain, the exhausts are a bit chunky, but after all it's Eduard, and you know they'll have no doubt loads in their Brassin range to complement this model. The one thing that I did use just to speed up was the set of canopy masks. With this being the weekend one, it didn't come with any, and in all fairness, with the additional price of those canopy masks, it's probably worth just buying the Profi pack. It'll come out the same. Varnish wise, we used VMS matte to good effect. Very, very thin coat just to kill the sheen. And then I've just come back in with some other mixes of the top colours, just so that when you look at the model you catch it in a different light. It doesn't always look dead flat. So that's Eduard's little Spitfire. So taking a look on the Eduard website, you can see that there's plenty of accessories for this kit, and they will certainly enhance the areas that are not lacking really, because it is 1/72 scale. But if you want to take the model perhaps to the next level, you can have a look at those. They're over on the, like I said, on the Eduard website. So all I need to do now with this one is go and take it to the photo studio and get some photo shots. I've already managed to break the pitot off the wing underneath, and I've not put any aerial wires on this time, because no matter how hard I try, before I've done the photographs, if I put the wires on the antenna masts and things like that, I always invariably snap them off. So please forgive those images for not being totally complete, but rest assured they will be on the model once it's completed. So let me know your thoughts about the Spitfire and Eduard's range of 72nd scale kits in the comments below. And let's have a little vote on what we're going to do next. So we've got the 190, the Mustang, and I think we've got the 109 F. I'm not too sure, I'll have to check what mark it is. But what would you like to see next to accompany the bigger builds? This one hopefully has filled the 25 to 30 minute bracket. It's not by any means meant to be an in-depth video build. I've tried to just do like a video diary as I've been working on the kit. So there are, if you want step by step, you're certainly not going to get that with this one. But anything that was really important I have covered, and I'll try and cover a little bit in each of those, perhaps hints and tips and tricks and things like that. So overall, fantastic little build to support the ones that are big projects that drag on, get a bit frustrated because I'm not finishing anything. So brilliant mojo build. Go and grab yourself one, you won't be disappointed. So until next time everybody, look after yourselves, take care and stay well.